All right, let's get right into it. Today we're talking about an absolutely epic clash of titans from the ancient world. It's a story about a world conqueror who finally met a will he couldn't break, a challenge that made him rethink what victory even means.
And you've got to love how our source material just drops us right into the action with this line. This isn't just some dry history report, you know? It's the saga of King Porus, a man who stood up for the honor of his homeland against a force that had literally brought empires to their knees.
So, first things first, let's set the scene with our first section here, the world conqueror's arrival. We're talking about the year 326 BCE. A man named Alexander of Macedon, who we now know as Alexander the Great, has just been on an unstoppable tear, carving a path of conquest across pretty much the entire known world.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It shows you the insane momentum he had. He invades the massive Persian Empire, takes down its emperor Darius III. He seemed completely unbeatable. By 327 BCE, he's knocking on India's door. And a year later, he's standing on the banks of the Jhelum River, looking for his next big win.
But here's where things get interesting. Before a single sword is even drawn against a major Indian kingdom, something happens. The king of a neighboring kingdom, a guy named Ambhi, just gives up. He doesn't just surrender, he actually offers Alexander a ton of treasure and even his own soldiers. This move really deepens the threat, and it sets up this incredible contrast with the man Alexander's about to meet.
And that brings us to our main character, and what the source calls his unbreakable resolve. While King Ambhi chose to bow, King Porus, who ruled the lands right between the Jhelum and Chenab rivers, chose something very different: defiance.
And wow, this quote just says it all, doesn't it?
Porus made his position crystal clear. He said, "We will welcome the Greek Yavanas not with gifts, but with our swords." Now, Yavanas was the ancient Indian word for the Greeks. So for Porus, this was never just about protecting land. This was a fight for honor, for sovereignty. The line in the sand had been drawn.
Which leads us to the main event, the Great Battle of Jhelum. You see, Alexander's huge army gets to the river, but they are stopped dead in their tracks. And it's not just one thing, it's two. First, the river itself is flooded and totally raging. And second, on the other side, Porus's entire army is waiting for them.
Now, this wasn't just a clash of armies. It was a total clash of fighting styles. On one side, you've got Alexander's incredibly disciplined Macedonian phalanx and his world-famous cavalry. They were masters of formation and strategy. And on the other side, well, Porus had the home field advantage and a truly terrifying weapon, the raw shock and awe power of war elephants.
200. Just let that number sink in. That's how many war elephants Porus had lined up. For the Macedonians, who had never seen anything like this on such a scale, these weren't just animals. They were absolute instruments of terror.
Our source uses this amazing Hindi phrase to describe them, Chalate Pirate Durg, which literally translates to moving fortresses. I mean, can you just imagine that for a second? These giant creatures could trample men, smash right through infantry lines, and toss soldiers around with their trunks. The psychological damage alone was just immense.
Alexander, being the military genius he was, knew a head-on attack was basically suicide. So he turned to brilliant deception. First, he created a distraction, making a huge show of preparing to cross right in front of Porus. But then, under the cover of a massive storm, he secretly marched a huge part of his force miles up the river. And finally, he crossed at an unguarded spot, allowing him to completely flank his opponent.
And when the fighting finally started, it was just pure chaos. The ground soaked from the rain turned into this treacherous mud pit. Indian archers with these super powerful longbows were firing arrows that apparently just punched right through Greek shields. Then came the elephants, crashing into the Macedonian phalanx and just shattering their famous formations. And right in the middle of it all was Porus, fighting like a legend from his lead elephant. But Alexander adapted. He used his fast-moving cavalry to attack the elephants from the sides, causing the wounded, panicked animals to turn back and trample Porus's own men.
So Porus eventually lost the battle, but the story was so far from over. This is the part of the story called Honor Hidden in Defeat, and it's where this physical battle turns into a straight-up battle of wills.
Think about this. Even after his army was broken and he himself was suffering from more than 9 serious wounds, Porus refused to give up. He just kept on fighting until he was totally surrounded and captured. His body might have been defeated, but his spirit was absolutely unconquered.
So Alexander, who was just blown away by the courage of the man who had almost beaten him, has the wounded king brought before him. And he asks this simple but incredibly powerful question:
And what happens next? Well, it's the stuff of legend. Without a single hint of fear, not a shred of submission, Porus delivers this iconic line. In that one moment, covered in blood and mud, he wasn't a prisoner. He was Alexander's equal. He may have lost the battle, but with those words, he absolutely won the war for respect.
This incredible show of pride, of sheer honor, created what we're now calling the immortal legacy. It was a moment that sent ripples far beyond that battlefield and ended up shaping the entire future of Alexander's campaign.
Alexander was apparently so stunned, so deeply impressed by this answer, that he did something nobody expected. He didn't just set Porus free, he gave him his entire kingdom back, and even added more land to it. He started treating Porus not as a defeated enemy, but as a respected ally.
So when you think about it, what was Porus's real victory here? Well, for one, he kept his kingdom and his honor. But even bigger than that, the brutal, fierce resistance his army put up completely broke the morale of Alexander's soldiers. They'd faced moving fortresses, they'd faced an unbreakable king, and they flat out refused to march any further into India. Porus might have lost the battle, but he stopped the world's greatest conqueror right in his tracks.
And that really leaves us with this final thought, doesn't it? Alexander conquered more land than almost anyone in history, but Porus, even in defeat, conquered the respect of his conqueror. It really makes you ask, what's the true measure of victory? Is it the land you take, or is it the respect you command, even from your greatest enemy?